Many of our viewers know that I live in the St. Louis area, and St. Louis, of course, best known for its famous landmark, the St. Louis Gateway Arch. The weighted catenary arch is 630 feet tall and 630 feet wide. It's the tallest accessible building in Missouri and the tallest man-made monument in the United States. Some 804 of its approximately 38,898 tons is structural stainless steel, making it the tallest stainless steel monument in the world, and meaning that it used more stainless steel than any other single project in history. The reason for all that stainless steel is simple, because as the name implies, stainless steel is particularly resistant to rust. But the unique properties of stainless steel recommend it for a number of different uses, not just for giant monuments, but of course in your silverware drawer, or in hospitals, or in space. It seems like almost anything can be made out of stainless steel. But stainless steel came relatively recently in the history of metallurgy. And the history of the discovery of stainless steel deserves to be remembered. The invention of stainless steel is most commonly attributed to English metallurgist Harry Brearly. Brearly was born in 1871 in Sheffield, came to the field of metallurgy in the most practical way, starting at the age of 12 as a laborer at the steelworks where his father worked. He moved to the company's chemistry lab as a bottle washer at age 14, learned fast and studied hard, and became known as an expert in metallurgy. In 1908, two of the largest steelworks in Sheffield, John Brown and Company and Thomas Firth & Sons, joined together to create a research laboratory and asked the 37-year-old Brearly to lead the project. In 1913, in the run-up to the First World War, Brearly was working to solve the problem of erosion, that is, excessive wear inside firearms. He was experimenting with an alloy that added chromium to steel, because chromium was known to have heat-resistant properties. When he discovered an alloy that was also highly resistant to corrosion. But here we need to step back a moment, because as exciting as Brearly's discovery was, it took a little bit to get there. The story at least goes back a century before Brearly with the metallurgical experiments of Michael Faraday. Considered one of the most influential scientists of all time and a brilliant experimentalist, between 1819 and 1823, Faraday worked with a maker of cutlery named James Stoddart, investigating the properties of various alloys of steel, including adding chromium to steel. Among their conclusions was that a steel-chromium alloy was resistant to certain acids, but they were not able to successfully create an alloy with a high chromium content. While they made many determinations about how certain types of metals interacted with steel, they were unable at the time to develop a practical application for their alloys, and the research stopped after Stoddart died in 1823. In 1872, two Englishmen, J.E.T. Woods and J. Clark, filed for a patent for an alloy that was steel with 30% chromium. They did talk about its potential application in environments that might be exposed to acids, but they didn't seem to well understand the potential commercial applications of the alloy, nor did they explain the process by which they could make an alloy that was 30% chromium. And apparently they didn't have a lot of faith in their own invention, because while it received a provisional patent, they never filed the formal specifications that would turn it into a formal patent, and apparently didn't pursue the idea any further. In 1875, French metallurgist Henri-Aimé Brousselain discovered a connection between carbon and rust. In brief, he determined that a very low carbon content was necessary in order to make a steel alloy with a large amount of chromium. That was an issue, however, in that there was no practical method for creating carbon-free chromium. The problem was solved when German chemist Hans Goldschmidt developed the Goldschmidt process, in which aluminum metal is oxidized by an oxide of another metal, producing great heat. Among the applications of the process was the ability to smelt metal without the use of carbon, thus allowing the ability to smelt carbon-free chromium. In 1911, German P. Monarts and W. Borchs described the anti-corrosion properties of a chromium steel alloy, noting that the properties increased when the chromium content was above 10.5%. They received a German patent for corrosion-resistant, carbon-free chromium steel. So what we would today call stainless steel did predate Brearly, but to that point, all those discoverers didn't seem to realize the potential commercial applications of the alloy. Again, Brearly was making chromium alloys not to fight corrosion, that is oxidation, but erosion inside gun barrels. His primary interest was in the way that a chromium steel alloy resisted heat. However, he stumbled on the corrosion-resistant qualities of the metal. There are a couple of stories for how that happened. One popular story was that he was discarding byproducts of his work and noticed that some pieces did not rust. That is now generally thought to be apocryphal. Another suggests that he needed to etch the alloys to study them, and realized that the chromium alloy was highly resistant to nitric acid. Whatever the case, what set Brearly apart, and the reason he is still most often considered to be the discoverer of stainless steel, was that he immediately grasped its commercial potential. His employer was disinterested in the find, so Brearly started working with a friend at a local cutlery company. There are several advantages to stainless steel cutlery. It's easy to clean. It's resistant to rusting or staining. Unlike silver, it does not need to be polished regularly. It's hard enough for knives to keep their edge, but soft enough for them to be sharpened with a normal household sharpener. Brearly had come up with the name rustless steel, but his friend at the cutlery shop recommended stainless steel, and that is the name that stuck. When he perfected the first alloy, it was 0.24% carbon and 12.8% chromium. The date for the discovery is most often given as August 13th, 1913. There are many other claimants. The pieces have been coming together for at least a decade, and the time for the invention was ripe. In fact, when Brearly went to patent his alloy in the United States, he ran into a patent dispute with American inventor and automotive pioneer Elwood Hayes. Hayes had been working on corrosion-resistant alloys for use in spark plugs, although his interest in chromium steel was said to be derived from his frustration with a rusty razor blade. Rather than compete, they pooled their patents and created the American Stainless Steel Company. There were other inventors with fair claims to having been the first to produce a chromium steel alloy, but Brearly is generally described as the one to discover stainless steel, as he was the first to turn it into a commercially viable use, and the first to use the name stainless steel. The unique properties of stainless steel has to do with something called passivation. When there is sufficient chromium in steel and the surface is exposed to oxygen in air or water, the alloy spontaneously forms a microscopically thin, inert surface film of chromium oxide. This film prevents further corrosion by blocking oxygen diffusion to the steel surface, and thus prevents corrosion from spreading into the bulk of the metal. The film is even self-repairing. If the film is scratched, a new film will form if there is contact with oxygen. This is why a stainless steel knife can be sharpened without exposing the metal to corrosion. Although it's important to remember that while stainless steel is resistant to corrosion, it still is subject to corrosion. It is stainless, not stain-free. While there were many more developments to go to be able to produce stainless steel in industrial quantities, and many different types of alloys were still to be produced, the applications of stainless steel were immediately apparent. In addition to cutlery, it was particularly valuable for surgical tools. Tools such as scalpels were useless as soon as they developed rust. Stainless steel was not only rust resistant, but heat resistant, and tools could easily be cleaned and heated to sterilize them. Later, stainless steel was used for surgical implants. While development was stalled during the First World War, it progressed quickly thereafter. By the 1920s, stainless steel was being used to construct tanks to store nitric acid. Because it could be so thoroughly cleaned and was resistant to corrosion, it was a perfect vessel for fermenting beer. Because of its combination of a high strength-to-weight ratio and corrosion resistance, stainless steel has been used in airplane manufacturing from the 1930s. When the Queen Mary launched in 1934, stainless steel was used in everything from the kitchens to the decor to the engines. According to the December 1930 issue of Popular Science, some 25,000 tons of stainless steel was produced in the United States in 1929. Some of that steel was being used on what would briefly be the world's tallest building. In addition to other properties, stainless steel buffs to an attractive, shiny appearance. That appearance is part of the iconic Art Deco appearance of New York's Chrysler Building, one of the first to extensively use stainless steel over an exposed building surface. When the building was opened, May 28, 1930, it was the tallest building in the world. The stainless steel cladding, using an alloy that was developed in Germany, served as a test subject to study the durability of stainless steel in architecture. Inspections occurred every 5 years until 1960, when they were discontinued because the steel had shown little to no corrosion. But the stainless steel of the Chrysler Building was ornamental, not structural. Despite obvious advantages, the production of stainless steel was largely too expensive to use as a structural steel for large buildings. Because it hadn't been used, industrial standards for structural stainless steel had not been developed when ground was broken on the construction of the Gateway Arch in 1959. As the arch was planning to use not just structural stainless steel, but more stainless steel than any project in history, there was quite a lot of research being done to understand and define structural standards. But the arch was not the first large structural application for stainless steel. While the arch was still under construction, the U.S. stainless steel industry donated the steel for the Unisphere for the 1964 New York World's Fair. The 140-foot tall, 120-foot diameter stainless steel sculpture in Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, was fabricated by the American Bridge Company and completed in just 110 days. The world's largest globe, at 70,000 pounds, was the test of the research on structural stainless steel being done for the Gateway Arch. Although it had some structural and cosmetic rehabilitation in 1989, the sphere is still at the park today, where the stainless steel has shown remarkably little deterioration. The Gateway Arch was completed May 25, 1968. At nearly 50 years of exposure to the elements, and despite coming before many advancements allowing better quality, more consistent production of stainless steel, a 2015 inspection of the arch found no structural concerns, and only recommended cleaning to remove some discoloration from deposits of industrial pollutants. In 1954, the Union Carbide Company patented a process called argon-oxygen decarburization, although they didn't have a practical spelter to be able to use the process until after the Gateway Arch was finished. The multi-step process allows you to decarburize the alloy to the point that it's only 0.05% carbon. It puts molten alloy into a vessel where they inject oxygen and either argon or nitrogen inert gas, and that helps to preserve the rare earth elements. And what all that means is it allows you to produce more steel, more cheaply, and more consistently with a lower carbon content. And partly because of the process of AOD, in 2018 the world produced a staggering 50,729,000 metric tons of stainless steel. Today, stainless steel is rolled into sheets, plates, bars, wire, and tubing. Stainless steel has revolutionized entire industries, especially the culinary and medical fields, but it's also used in cars, trains, boats, planes, and spacecraft. And of course, kitchen sinks. Today, there are roughly 100 different grades or different alloys of stainless steel available, roughly grouped into 4 categories depending upon the molecular structure for myriad industrial uses. The different alloys have different resistances to corrosion in different environments. And because stainless steel lasts so long and is 100% recyclable, it's among the world's most sustainable resources. Almost half of the stainless steel produced in the United States is made from melted down scrap metal. And there's new research that's using bio-inspired adhesives to make stainless steel naturally antibacterial. And so this metal, which has such an interesting history, looks to have a very promising future. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The History Guy, short snippets of forgotten history between 10 and 15 minutes long. And if you did enjoy, please go ahead and click that thumbs up button. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for future episodes, please write those in the comment section. I will be happy to personally respond. Be sure to follow The History Guy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and check out our merchandise on teespring.com. And if you'd like more episodes on forgotten history, all you need to do is subscribe.